feel free to give us hand signals, like
keep it going.
Hey, taxi! Or soldering something.
like wrap it up, or titty bang bang. Or,
Okay.
or I'm not following you. Hand signals are really great on a podcast.
Loving this energy.
So far.
No, it's great. It's really great. Can we just start with some introductions?
My name is Jess Conda. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a writer, creator. And I play such things in 2 Clocks as a little girl, and an old man, and a lion. No more spoilers.
My name is Mel Rodman. I use they, them pronouns. My relationship to 2 Clocks is that I'm 1/3 of it. Right now I'm sitting in the middle. Yeah, I guess that means writer, performer, co-creator, co-holder of space for other people involved with this community that keeps blooming, and
Co-producer.
yeah, co-producer.
Big deal.
And
Let's talk about that, Kellie.
we are miming, ramming our head against the wall. I play such things as a bat lady, also an old man, a mime, an anti-abortion activist.
My name is Jen Kidwell. She, they. Writer, performer, creator, co-producer, all of the co's.
Except for Vid. Fingers crossed.
Vid? COVID.
Nothing for that.
I'm really excited to be doing this with you 3. I haven't done one of these interviews in a second, and I've never done it with 3 people at once. So
Where are you going to look, Kelly?
I don't know. I guess I'll just do a lot of pivoting.
Add a ball change. Add a ball change. That's a dance joke. I can say, well, we all were members of the first class of a graduate program in this very town of Philadelphia at the Pig Iron School. The first year that they premiered their 2-year training program in physical theater and ensemble devising. And we were old in that school. in a class of mostly much younger people. And I feel like us, and there were 2 other people who were like on the top age range. And
In their 30s. In the way that young
like
actors are like, it's old to be in your 30s. Now we're in our 40s.
40s are still young. But at
That's
the
also
time,
true.
we were like, wait, we're going to be doing like 6 hours of acrobatics and flips every week? Like, wow, our backs don't work like these malleable 22-year-olds.
I remember I met you the first day because I had taken down a Mae West burlesque show the day before the first day of school. And I was like, I do burlesque. And you were like, me too, because you had just moved from D.C. That's the first time I really remember connecting with you on the first day of school and being like, this person is electrifyingly enthusiastic. And I remember circling around you, Jen, like a mysterious shark. We didn't get partnered.
Who's the shark?
We were both the shark.
Oh.
We had a beautiful car ride on the way to the ocean where we talked about our
Right,
mothers.
On the way to the ocean.
And that's how we really connected. To me, I feel like Jen and Mel and I met in the bits between the bits of school and became friends first. It was true.
Chemistry, some absurdity, idiocy, like a lot of hilarity, some deep pocket humor, and then confusion. And those are the textures I remember having always been around. And then there was this moment where we were asked to invent characters, and our characters, they were deep character studies, and our characters always had real chemistry with each other, like a kind of the way that one might describe the textures of attraction were different depending on the characters, and they're magnets to one another. But there was some, like Jen and I had a couple of characters that were, there was a lot of sexual attraction.
Grad school.
Yeah,
Right?
we really started, I think,
Mm-hmm.
we really started to choose each other.
So take me from this origin story, from this chemistry you found between the 3 of you, to those with 2 Clocks. How did you get to this piece?
Len and Stan were two characters to this point, Mel, that you made that were like, some of these characters had magnetism. I had played a man named Len, and that was like
Death.
a seed, yeah.
And harmless fun.
And harmless fun.
They
yeah.
used to direct their attention to topics that I think pointed to this thing that we're still playing with, about like where misogyny lives and can creep in and sort of quote unquote harmless ways.
It offers like a geometry that allows people to like deflect attention. So it's like if I want to be avoidant, then I'm just going to dabble in some light misogyny and take the focus off of me and like maybe my mortality or like some of my deeper problems that I don't actually want to address. I'm saying me as, as a man person.
Sometimes I think devising is like a visual artist will make sketches of a much larger work later. And so you can see how there are studies over time that are drafting out ideas of a larger panel. That feels really, to me, resonant with the way that I think we work as devisers, which is like, oh, there's this thing, we're kind of like chewing on it, and then you'll see it show up, or you'll tinker with it in a room, or you'll have a piece that's a half an hour long that you show to these audiences, or a cabaret sketch that you show in these ways, and then over time that can grow and deepen and mature.
That's the coolest thing about devising, right? Is that the dots don't always make sense. Or you look back and you shake the tray and the textures are still there all along, you know? I mean, one thing with these drag characters, I think that was important. When we started doing them after school, we started doing different combinations of drag characters.
Yeah.
At different places. But I think there was always this question of, oh, everyone loves these old men. Everyone finds them so charming, so endearing. And there was something that we wanted to like peck and poke and scratch at, which is like, well, why? And is it really that you're making assumptions about the body that's underneath this that was socialized female, and therefore is that part of why these men are so acceptable to you? Or are these men so acceptable to you because of their age, that you're not really listening to the things that they're saying? Because we would tell a lot of dirty jokes at clubs that were offensive, and everyone would go, oh, so charming. So it's like, is it the thing that's like, you don't take this body seriously because it was socialized female? Or are you really listening to your dirty old uncle because he's out of pocket? Or what? And so I think that was where we really started to get curious.
Why is it called Those with Two Clocks?
There's an adage, those with one clock always know what time it is. Those with two clocks are never sure. We've been like building this praxis, and part of the praxis is not having to know all the time, like accepting like when you're at the edge of your knowledge and just being able to be there instead of trying to muscle through and like muster up some kind of answer. Just saying like, if you don't know, you don't know. And like what enters in the not knowing. And I think there's like a really beautiful kind of slippage about the 1 clock, 2 clock thing, where it's like, if I only have 1 clock, do I know all the possibilities? But if I have 2 clocks, am I overburdened with possibility? And like, where do I want to be? And what the fuck is a clock anyway? Like, isn't it just trying to tell me where the sun is in the sky?
That part.
And I think there are ways that 2 clocks have been evident in our process. We've been on multiple timelines, sometimes at 1 quote time, or it's sped up and slowed down, and just inviting in not knowing and not being dictated by a notion of, like, the imposition of a notion of time, which can be challenging for some, but also like maybe it's freeing.
Like urgency is a clock that I would like to banish from my bedside table. Urgency is a clock that I would like to remove from my tempo.
I think it's kind of this question about time and different clocks. There's also the second adage, which is even a broken clock is correct twice a day. There's a kind of validation that can come, whether the thing is actually working, that can just come by accident. And I think this question of time has this mirror to these systems that we're like, we know, for example, that patriarchy and white supremacy are not real. They are fabricated and constructed to benefit some people. literally over others. And those paradigms have been validated in the system that we're currently living in the reality that we're currently living in. And so there's kind of this lowercase t truth that can get insisted upon every day in these systems, in this paradigm that we live in. And yet, we know that there are lots of different calendars that exist in the world that we live in the paradigm that we live in. There's a lunar calendar. There's a total solar calendar. There's, I've been studying for the last couple of years Jewish time, and a Yiddish teacher of mine sent this link to a website explaining to its readers the Gregorian calendar, and is trying to explain how ridiculous it is. And it's like, oh, it's really confusing. It's like based off of this system a little bit and then this other system. It's really confusing. What it's doing is taking the perspective of the Jewish calendar as being the ubiquitous calendar of the paradigm that we live in, and sort of readjusting reality to that calendar. And I feel like there's an acknowledgement in this title of being like, we can choose to reorient toward other realities and other truths. For whatever fucking reason, we're fixated on this particular way of living and seeing and operating. And these are voluntary to some extent, for some more than others, but like, we are participating in the construction of a reality that is super lowercase r. I don't know, I don't have a better like way to...
Where it's just like...
Right? You're like, it's fucking made up.
And thinking about the way a notion of time dictates, like, yes, patriarchy, white supremacy, capitalism, anything that's trying to offer us a notion that we or something is not enough, or like, we might run out of it.
I feel like some of what you're talking about connects to your praxis. Would you all be willing to talk a little bit more about...
We'll talk about that praxis.
I mean, I'm like, it means something you practice, but there's so much more.
There was a moment in 2020, I remember so clearly, taking a walk through Cobb's Creek with Petra Floyd, who is a friend, a collaborator. Petra started describing praxis as being an embodied artistic practice. It's a way of embodying the work itself through practice. It's an embodied articulation or an embodied extension of the work itself that you're making. And it immediately, I was like, oh, I guess that's what I know I've been kind of doing with some other works for a really long time and didn't have language for it.
Praxis reminds me of walk the walk or talk the talk, or, like in the way that's like you can't make a piece of anti-patriarchal theater just on a surface level. Like the practices and procedures have to be deeply anti-patriarchal if you're going to tackle a thing that's so big. So like we had to look at our power structure and how we made decisions and all these things in order to serve the piece, right? And this thing that's like, so does theater, right? Yeah. Like you can't just change the plays that you produce. You can't just say we're making change with the artists, right?
Yeah.
Theater has to make changes within the institutional structure and the board and the way decisions are made. Otherwise, we're just exotifying artists. Yeah. And that's not good enough. And so that...
And checking in with somatics as well. Noting that, like, when structures are, like, not aligned.
Right.
And when the body feels a kind of way. Right?
Right.
Like, when these things are misaligned, if we're just talking about anti-patriarchy, but we're indulging in anti-patriarchy, we're talking about anti-patriarchy on stage, but we're indulging in patriarchy off stage, we don't feel aligned.
Which is why it's exciting to co-produce with y'all. I mean, not to sound like an ad, but, the fact that y'all are like, hey, we're the Wilma. We're unlearning a lot. We're learning a lot. We want to explore anti-patriarchal praxis more and more and more and more all the time. And y'all being like, lean into us, challenge us. Let's try to make this thing in a way. I mean, a really simple example is like, theater shouldn't feel punitive, or like this, like a simple example is like, if I am 10 minutes late to rehearsal because there was traffic or something happened dropping your kid off, or I had to go to the bathroom funny, or like,
Because time is a construct.
Right. That I'm not going to...
time is a fucking construct. So there is no 10 minutes late. Pardon me.
Things can get really punitive.
Yeah.
Your 10 minutes have betrayed me.
There's a way that's centering what the body needs. If you're hungry now, why wait till you have lunch later? You know, there's a way that centering the body, as Jen was saying, puts you in alignment to what's happening, and then also makes things truly easier. And so you save time later. You know, this thing of being like, hey, in the room, like, what does that feel like to be able to enter into a space? And if I'm late, the presumption is I want to be here. I've shown up. I'm late because something happened. But now my energy isn't redirected toward what I've done wrong or toward my scarcity. It's directed toward the flow of what is happening, which in our room truly has like become real joy and pleasure. And I think the radical thing, I just want to be honest, I feel like I really deal with time scarcity in my life, in the room, at home. Like I want to be real clear about, I acknowledge this is like one of the things that is really hard for me to unwind in myself, is this thing about actually leaning into time abundance. I know that it's there. I intellectually understand it. And then when push comes to shove and there's a week left of writing, I may be the first person in the room to be like, oh guys, I'm starting to want to pee my pants. Are we going to finish or not? You know, I feel it bubbling up, and it's taken time. But I think what's happening now, I can really clock in myself. I feel that scarcity, and truly sometimes we really pause our room to re-articulate our values, and then I can let it go. I can let it go more easily. I can let it go sooner, and then redirect the energy toward what's happening, and we save time later. It just sounds simple, but I'm like, on practical terms, I think this really is the thing of being like in our bodies, retraining ourselves toward a healthier system and training ourselves away from toxic systems is happening because we're letting ourselves practice truly different ways of embodying being in space together and working to co-create something.
There's all of this mutual trust and all of this like experience in the room. So trusting that, okay, if I can articulate questions or vulnerabilities, there's somebody there who's like, I got you. There's all these like gettings. So interconnected web of experience and care that feels so good. So it's not like the brittleness of having to prove or judging. It's the softness of relinquishing and trusting.
We've been talking in the rehearsal room with Rosie Herrera, our grande doula, which is a word that could mean director to some, but actually is more like she's guiding us through the process of birthing the piece. But talking about softness as power, you know, and this thing, like if it ever feels like pushing, you know, or like that thing, theater maker or no, you know, if you ever have that feeling that's like, I'm holding everything, I'm responsible for everything, that's too heavy and that's too much and that's not true, you know? So when we feel soft, we get more quote unquote done. The soft listening is actually the thing that accomplishes the goal. And if it ever feels like pushing, we have more years with that, or I do anyway, as someone, you know, socialized as a theater maker. That feeling is familiar, but listening to the softness and laying back and doing less is actually like a new kind of power unfurling. It's like a power of ease. And then lo and behold, the play arrives, hopefully, you know, in a way that feels good.
So the first part is an interactive lecture demonstration offered by the three of us together about laughter and comedy. The second part tests this hypothesis out and puts comedy in play in a short form bits that are skewering patriarchy. The third part is slower, more naturalistic drag section, still very comedic, still offering a response to an idea of what comedy is, but then really letting patriarchy live inside of it. Patriarchy and its failings live.
And that's where we meet Stan and Len and Gary. Okay.
Yeah.
That's when we really sit with those old men for a long time.
Literally. Sit. Then the fourth section is a threshold.
This theory about comedy is that good comedy takes you to the line of danger but doesn't cross over. And there's some different thoughts about reasons why humans laugh that are connected to safety. And so that's something that we're poking at through the play, which is like, how safe do you feel? And at whose expense is a joke? And isn't it all a joke? And so that stuff comes up very clearly in the beginning, but maybe throughout. And that, like, after laughing at all of this, hopefully laughing, what comes after laughing, right? Maybe crying, maybe healing, maybe releasing in different ways. But first we have to look at what's true and do something with it. So in the beginning of the piece, we're like, well, we're going to look at patriarchy, and we're going to look at humor, and we're going to laugh at it, hopefully.
And I would say, too, that the piece is asking us to look at notions of danger and safety, not just in terms of, like, what is the experience of the body as it's being confronted with a kind of danger, but also questioning the controls of performing safety, which I think are mechanisms that are in play for all of us. Like, you know, I clocked in and out. I'm performing safety. Thank you so much for the raise. I'm performing safety. I'm smiling at you. I'm smiling at you. I'm laughing. You must think I feel really comfortable. There are ways that things that purport to be safe, that safety can be a shit. This is going to the shit we were talking about today with the little girl, but I'm like, there's a way that the word safety, it can be interchanged with the word control. And like, how do we get to be clear about those things? Like, I want to keep you safe is often synonymous with I want to control you.
Yeah.
And let's not confuse the one for the other. Or like, who is offering danger? Who is proposing danger in this moment in which I am being invited to feeling safe? And if you are at once proposing my safety and proposing danger to me, what are you actually fucking doing?
Talk to me about your community partners. Tell me who they are, what they do, and why are they a part of this piece?
We have a team of community partners, vast and various, and also chosen for really beautiful, specific reasons. We're working with a birth doula, a death doula. These folks are also performance artists. We're working with some folks from the Masculinity Action Project, which is a part of Lutheran Settlement House. And this is a group doing amazing work. It's worth Googling them right now to learn about the work that they're doing all throughout Philadelphia about gender-based violence and teaching male accountability and vulnerability. We're working with someone who sings with the Philadelphia Threshold Singers, although she is also an abortion nurse and is here, you know, with all of those hats on.
And an author.
And an author! Patty wrote this book about being an abortion nurse. It's amazing.
What's a threshold singer?
A threshold singer, they're a group of volunteers who sing at various thresholds in people's lives, most commonly death. So they will come to your home and or wherever you may be, hospital, whatever, and sit around your bedside and they sing. They sing original music. It's choral. The thinking is that they're writing songs that are soothing, but also not songs that people would necessarily know from their earth experience. And they have a real practice of deep listening. All of our community partners have a practice of deep listening that goes beyond the expertise that we have to offer as theater makers. There's a point in the writing of the piece where we were like, we can't finish the piece with integrity without community. Otherwise, we're just theater makers making a point, and that's fine and beautiful. But at the edge of our expertise, can we create the ending of our show in conjunction with people that are doing empathetic work, that are doing anti-patriarchal work? And we started to dream about different groups of people that we knew or that we wanted to get to know that are doing this kind of work in the community. And we very vigorously contacted them and reached out to them and said, hey, we would like to bring you into our art making practice. It might seem mysterious to you, but we need you to do the work, which is to imagine at the end of this piece what liberation dreaming might look like, what healing might look like, what just like getting down together after this theater piece might look like. There's something that feels really vital about doing that with people who don't wholly identify as theater makers and who do this work each and every day in all different ways. So bringing those communities together, now we really have like a polyvocal collective of people who are loving the patriarchy out the door. And thankfully, they came along for the ride, and it's been really beautiful being in conversation with them. And it's so exciting to think about being on stage together, doing a ritual together that we want to share with you, dear listeners.
What do you want people to walk away wondering about or thinking or feeling?
I love this question.
If somebody was like, shit, after experiencing that, I thought to myself, why do I do that?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Yeah.
Like, why do I do that? And do I want to continue?
Yep, that's it.
I had a boss at a job I used to have. She was an amazing clinician. And every week we'd have supervision. So I'd just sit and talk about like what was working about the work I was doing and what wasn't. And it was a lot of like, this is not working. What you were doing here and here is not working. And her question that she would ask to me and ask to the clients of the site was, she was like, what happened? Like, well, I was doing this. And she'd be like, what do you get out of that? And I'm like, God damn, that question, articulating the answer to that question offers me the opportunity to ask myself questions. What do I get out of doing that? What do I get out of time? What do I get out of hierarchy? What do I get out of capitalism? I'm going to say I don't really get anything out of white supremacy, but maybe some people do. That's not me. Inviting myself to articulate what I get out of something, it also invites me to question whether or not that is, quote, worth it, end quote, to me. And then, like, maybe I get invited to start imagining another means for myself.
That makes me think about that story I was telling about my high school English teacher, Mr. Wydell. Shout out, each one teach one. And this day shout out to the educators, come on. This day in English class when he was like, I never assigned seats. You all just chose to sit in the same seat every day. And we were like, what? And it makes me think about that, that maybe the audience would think like, why am I choosing to do the things I do? Or what patterns and habits could just fall away? And then what? That's the sneaky thing about patriarchy, like we're so subtly complicit. Often even when we think we're doing the work to tear it down, even still. And so if the audience can ask any question of their routine, from seeing this play that is trying to defy genre and runtime. This is a piece that's asking people to behave in the theater differently, perhaps maybe for the first time, or to kind of shatter notions of how we are in theatrical space. If you can leave with that and think about why you're choosing to sit in the same seat every day, I think that would be amazing.
And multiple perspectives. I think something that our piece is really trying to do is acknowledge our audience has a multiplicity of entry points, of perspectives, of embodied experience, of hearts, brains, bodies. Different people will enter into and find different things in this work. And I think it's in our room to be trying to be resonant with various people variously. Something that happens in this first section, this lecture demonstration section, is whose line is it anyway? Like, where is that line of danger? It's different. It's different for different people. I think we're asking people to be brave and resilient when they show up to this work and acknowledge that we're not trying to harm anybody for realsy, but we are going to poke at a system. And there's this thing about humor, there's this phrase, punching up. Like, you can punch up, but you can't punch down. And where that comes from is social power and being like, well, it's okay to punch up at the people who have social power, quote, above you, and not okay, really harmful to punch downward toward the people who have less social advocacy or power. So I think something that we're doing is like, we're queering, we're that line is like a messy line in this show. And I think something that I appreciate about what we're trying to offer folks is like, show up as you. We hope we can earn your trust, that we're trying to provoke for a reason, and that we're trying to acknowledge everyone's birthright of perfection by the end of the piece. Spoiler alert, we're trying to make some t-shirts that say, you were born perfect, I was born perfect. I was born perfect, you were born perfect. This idea came from you, Jen, and feels like such a gift to sit with the fact, and I'm a parent, like, you bring your kid into the world and you're like, you're fucking perfect. How long can I keep you this way? How long can I shield you from the fact that this world is going to try to distort your perfection and abuse it? I think every parent...
Distort your notion of you for its own uses.
Thank
which
you.
is like really wild.
So wild, and I think truly is perpendicular to what every parent wants for their kid.
Which
that
is
what we're
amazing
saying,
there's so many parents, and we were all kids.
We were all kids. Somebody birthed us. Somebody brought this. Some people, whoever they are like inviting us into these paradigms. The thing of being like, you are born a perfect vessel. You're in that womb as a perfect possibility. No one wants, I think, truly to like offer cruelty to that perfect being. So, I mean, I know that's a complicated thing to say, but I'm like inviting the remembrance of perfection, which is also a loaded word, into our space. For me, that's something that I'm like deeply carrying with this piece, is what if I remember and am in contact with my birthright of perfection? And what if I am in contact with everyone's birthright of perfection? And to the points that y'all are making, it's like about offering a change in perspective so that during the course of the piece and also when you exit it, there's a voice from within which calls us to really ask, like, is this the way that you want to be moving through this world?
It's like, if we're all going to die,
which we are,
all gonna die, why spend the time indulging in anything except our fucking innate perfection? Like, what do we get out of indulging in anything less? We're gonna die anyway. So why would I tell myself a story that offers me anything except my complete and utter innate perfection? Why would I indulge anything else?
But that everyone deserves it. Not just people in power. Because the thing is...
like, meaning everybody. Like, this is not... There's no, like, bin of perfection that gets tipped over if I am indulging my own. That's the beauty of it. There's enough perfection for everyone. If we're all starting from there. There's no such thing as, like, we have to cap our perfection at you.
Right.
No.
I mean, I think what happens sometimes is that, like, please don't come and be like, oh, there's no healing for old white men. That the thing about this liberation dreaming is, like, there's healing for everyone. You know?
Because everybody has been wronged by the thought that they are anything wrong.
Right.
And we teach wrong.
Yeah.
We teach that. We can wrong each other. If you do some non-consensual shit, you've done some non-consensual shit and you've wronged me. But you being who you are is not wrong. That is something that actually, like, makes the playing field of life even. And that is the reason why this is not a special message for anyone.
Right.
Because it's not about, like, you're marginalized, so you need this message more than anybody else. No. The message is, if I can accept my innate perfection and you can accept your innate perfection, there's no
We're good.
There's no power differential.
Right. Right.
And we all need to learn that message.
So that we all can heal.